Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us to talk about something that we've all been experiencing in real time across 2025. And that is the absolute running into the ground that every single big gacha title, at least under the Hoyoverse umbrella, has experienced across the past 6 or 7 months of the year. And when I'm referring to these games, I'm talking about games like Honkai Star Rail, like Zenless Zone Zero, and like, of course, Genshin Impact. And I think it's all come to a big, ugly, pus-filled head because of everything that we've been seeing so far with the Fate collaboration. The Unlimited Blade Works collaboration that has fallen flat in every single way possible, to the point that even those that wanted to love it, those that loved HSR and those that loved Fate, couldn't even find the willpower to say that it was good. We've just got Braxphone over here as a fan of both franchises talking about how crazy the situation is. And what I wanted to do was actually take the time today to break down how across every single title these games have been going downhill to such an absurd, ridiculous degree. It could be a combination of crazy monetization practices, it could be a combination of budget getting cut, or, at least in Honkai Star Rail's case, complete laziness in terms of how they put the collab together. But one thing is clear to anybody that's either played all 3 of the games, tried them out for a little bit, the effort is not there, and holy moly, is Hoyoverse farming its players. So with that, why don't we go ahead and get started off with the hot topic of discussion. That's going to be Honkai Star Rail, and talk about how this game's gotten run into the ground. So if you're all familiar with Honkai Star Rail, you would know that it started off the year in January with an absolute whimper, not a bang. And that is the Honkai Star Rail 3.0 update, their new version update in Amphorius that was so bad that they had to put out an emergency developer radio talking about all of the ways that they're looking to shorten the story, all of the ways that they're going to address things like characters being too weak. And this is when they finally announced that they were going to streamline the story and, of course, also buff the characters, buff some of the older members of the roster. And as you're all familiar with this was back in January, or maybe early February, and the buffs were just delivered in 3.4. So they took 6 months to actually follow through on their promises. And from what you'll see over here, they disrespected your time in Amphorius, led to so many individuals quitting the game, and didn't really let up on it until apparently version 3.4. It took 6 months for the story in this game to actually get good, and then when a good patch like 3.4, supposedly good patch like version 3.4, has launched, they bundle it alongside one of the worst collabs in the history of the game, where they go ahead and have all of the collaboration characters, all of the units that people are there for, silent for a majority of the quest. And boy, oh boy, does this scream mismanagement if I've ever heard of it. I can't even fathom how this is a situation that came up when this collaboration was announced a year in advance. And now it lives up to the reputation as possibly one of the worst collabs in the history of gacha gaming. You combine that with the diminishing quality of the story, with one redeeming little thing in 3.4, and you can't help but think that these devs have no idea what they're doing in the writing room. They got no idea what they're doing, and they are disrespecting you with 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hour story quests on top of it. Thank God, though, they finally added a skip button, and so maybe this game's gonna have a redeeming factor. But I guess the rumors with the skip button are actually true. You know how a lot of Hoyoverse shills were going ahead and critiquing Wuthering Waves because it had a skip button? They were telling people, ugh, skip button's awful. What they're gonna do is just make the story dog shit because they know everyone's gonna skip it. It turns out that critique wasn't made for Wuthering Waves. That critique was actually made for Honkai Star Rail. It's like those players knew that the devs were gonna make the story absolute dog shit trash the patch that they included the skip button, because that's literally what happened for the Fate collab. The best way to enjoy the Fate collab is to literally press the skip button throughout it, because there's maybe 1, 2, perhaps 3 cutscenes that are actually worth watching across this story quest. Maybe about 2 to 3 minutes worth of actual gameplay, and you can just see that on YouTube instead of wasting your fucking time on it in game. So that's Honkai Star Rail. That's how far this game has fallen. And this is the other thing. I didn't even mention the worst part about all of it. Y'all want to see what the Pride Win tier list looks like for this game? You want to see how it's been balanced? Let's just take a look. Every single new character is the best one. I see. Gotcha. Every single new character is the best across every single category. The new character is the best one. And if they're not straight up the best, they will be the second best. And then everybody else ends up getting pushed down. We have Acheron in T1. We got Fireflies in, like, where the fuck even is she? In tier 3. Good God, what is happening to the balance of this game? Characters have a shelf life that are less than a year. They've set the gold standard for power creep in gacha games, where your E0S1 unit is slowly becoming more and more and more useless within less than 365 days. And the thing is, they raised the damage ceilings on every single unit. They raised the buffing ability on every single unit. They've turned a healer into a DPS with Hyacinth, a healer that ends up doing more damage than actual DPS characters. And they're just calling it a day. They're just calling it a day on top of all of that when it comes to the balancing. That's just some of the issues. There are plenty more, but we've got to move on to the next game. And the next game that we want to talk about over here, ladies and gentlemen, is still related to the Hoyoverse umbrella. And it's one of the ones that's been impacted the most by power creep over the past couple of months. It hasn't even been a year yet. And that's going to be, ladies and gentlemen, Genshin Impact. Do you all want to know how Genshin Impact started off the year? They started off the year by releasing this character and this character on the same banner. Do you all remember what happened with Lantern Right? They had 20 free pulls for Lantern Right, but those 20 free pulls were outside of the Phase 1 banner that housed both of these two units. But hey, right, that wouldn't be that big of a deal. That wouldn't be that much of an issue, right? Two new banners, two new units. Surely you don't need both of them at the same time, right? Surely they're just like, you know, regular, somewhat meta additions to the roster. You're not gonna need them, right? Oh, wait, you kinda did. Because when prior teams in the game were dealing upwards of around like 60 to 80k DPS, Mavuika Sitlali teams at like C0R1 blah blah blah, not that much investment, are going in and dealing 110k plus damage in their rotations. Yeah, these two characters are so absurdly, retardedly broken together that they completely destroyed the damage ceiling of the game. Much like what happened in a title like Honkai Star Rail, where I think the devs literally took a bunch of inspiration from the HSR devs and saw how stuff was still selling and just decided, fuck it, whatever. Surely it's not going to be that big of a deal. They'll just keep pulling. And it worked. Because Mavuika and Sitlali ended up, due to their absurd strength relative to other units, they sold a crazy amount. And right, because both of their banners were on the same phase, well, it looks like greed won out here on Hoyoverse's end. I'm sure there are a lot of people, a lot of individuals topping up for this bad boy combo. Because if you had this, you were steamrolling pretty much every single thing in the game that wasn't straight up pyro immune. And so, do you want to know what they followed up on this with? They followed up on this with everyone's new favorite endgame mode. Really, no, everybody hates this fucking mode. Stygian Onslaught. A game mode where if you don't have Sitlali and Mavuika, don't have them on the same team, you have no chance of clearing it. And if you don't have them at C6, R5, you have no chance of clearing it on the highest difficulty mode. You want to know the best part about the whole C6, R5 whale conversation? It's that it doesn't even matter if you have C6, R5 units. It has to be C6, R5 versions of these units. You can't use your C6 Hu Tao. You can't use your C6 Alhaitham, your C6 Yalan, your C6 Nuvalet. You need a C6 copy of these two units and all of the newest characters that have come on the Genshin Impact banners to have any chance of completing this highest difficulty mode. Absurd. Ridiculous. Even whaling doesn't work. You have to be a recent whale. Somebody that's decided to whale in the past year, not somebody that whaled in the past 2 or 3 years. And that's just another way that these Genshin Impact developers are absolutely disrespecting you as a customer. And it's another way how they're killing gacha. And so, of course, right, you might be wondering, okay, surely Genshin Impact's issues are just on, like, the power creep side, right? Oh, they're just on the character design side, maybe a little bit on the monetization. Surely Genshin Impact is not that bad if you're just in it to, like, enjoy the story, right? But this is the unfortunate part, ladies and gentlemen. It just gets worse. It gets worse even if you're just a story enjoyer. Because this is what your story looks like.
No, please, spare the children! Stay back!
They're coming!
Run!
Help!
Eliminate the threat.
Take them down!
So, you can't get character balance. You have rampant power creep. You have damage ceiling getting raised every single update. And, of course, with the raising damage ceiling every update, you're also getting massive amounts of HP inflation. And, when it comes to casually enjoying the story, well, you can't really do that either because they managed to make the story complete dog shit. Yep, this is the animation quality that they're putting into an update that went live 3 weeks ago. This is the animation quality and the storytelling quality of an update released in 2025, the most recent fucking one. There's no effort being put into balancing. There's no effort into being put into the end game design, and there's no effort being put into the story. And if you want the proof of the HP inflation and all that other stuff, you can just look at any of my prior videos, and you will literally see here, ladies and gentlemen, the exact dynamic right here. The exact dynamic that I'm talking about, where after the release of Mavuika, you have the HP going up. I'm pretty sure there's a Honkai Star Rail one that I can show in here too. Oh, there we go. And now you got the Honkai Star Rail one too. And you want to know what else is up when it comes to this entire category? Yeah, we got Zenless Zone Zero as well. We got Zenless Zone Zero as well, ladies and gentlemen. So it's every single game. It's every single game. And so we've covered Honkai Star Rail. We've covered Genshin Impact. We've gotten a little bit into the HP inflation and the power creep in ZZZ. Let's get down to brass tacks, and now let's talk about the red-headed stepchild of Hoyoverse games. And this is where stuff's going to get a little bit unfortunate, and this is where stuff's going to get a little bit sad. Because we've just talked about how the two biggest games under the Hoyo umbrella have been completely shitting the bed. Don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, it only gets worse from here. I think a lot of people, or frankly, not really that many people, have actually seen the new character showcase for Ukinami Yuzuha, who's a new unit coming out in version 2.1 of Zenless Zone Zero, one of the strongest meta-wise that's going to appear in the game. And one thing in particular when it comes to this trailer is that clearly a lot of budget has been cut from this thing. You can go ahead, right? Just kind of like look at the animation quality and all of the crazy things that are occurring across this trailer. And what you'll notice is that, this doesn't really look like a character demo. This almost looks like just a random fight in-game. Not a lot of special effects. Nothing really, you know, catching the eye. And then when you compare it to some of the prior trailers that this game has had... Okay, that was a little crazy. When you compare it to some of the prior trailers that this game has had, what seems to be standing out to you? There seems to be a lot more custom assets, a lot of unique artwork, a lot of characterization being put into these trailers to try to sell these units. Right? A lot of very, very, very unique stuff. You even take a look at Hugo, who's a dude. And that's where the moan came from. You look at a dude's trailer like Hugo, where you know they're not going to make that much money in ZZZ. And there's just so much more effort put into this one. So much more characterization. So much more unique artwork. All of that. And that's just only 2 months ago. And then you look at this units. And this is the comparison, brother. All just rendered in-game animations. Absolutely nothing else. And this is the thing. My take is that it's clear this game is losing budget. It's clear that Hoyoverse is giving them a much shorter leash in terms of like their creativity, their characterization, how they're going to be working to sell these units. And I think it's because of one thing. This game is really not doing well. Especially for a 2.0 update. Especially following after all the crazy advertising and the rampant shilling that was done for this game's anniversary. 2.0 was and is one of the worst version updates that the game has ever had, and one of the worst version updates that a gacha game as a whole has ever had. It is performing miserably. I think the budget got slashed. And the thing is, I don't even think I can blame the ZZZ devs for this one. I think it's Hoyoverse fucking up all of the stuff. Because when you look at mechanics in the game that are undoubtedly doing a lot of damage, things like Miasma, which was added primarily just to sell a new class of unit. And then you look at things like the HP inflation. Oh, there's so many videos that can be made about this game's HP inflation. It's absolutely insane. ZZZ is kind of like the byproduct of everything wrong with Hoyoverse. If you think about Miasma in the context of this, Miasma shields are like a combination of the Night Soul mechanic from Genshin Impact, where you actually have to go ahead and if you don't have the newest unit from the newest region, fighting the boss sucks. Instead of a new region, it's a new unit type. And that new unit type being Rupture, or Yi Zhuan's class, is essentially like taking the Remembrance class from Honkai Star Rail, where the only purpose of it is to sell the newest unit, and then they conjoin them together into the game. I feel like if the Hoyoverse influence wasn't there for ZZZ, Miasma and the Rupture class would not exist. And frankly, if Hoyoverse's influence wasn't so prevalent on this game, I genuinely believe that the game would not have 111% HP inflation since version 1.4 of the game. From 1.4 to 2.0, 1, 2, 3, 4 version updates, the HP has gone up 111% in Shiyu defense. Yeah, 111% HP inflation in 4 updates. In 4 updates. Yeah. And so, they're also combining the Genshin and the HSR method of selling units as well. Make every new character deal more damage than the last one. Increase the difficulty of the endgame modes to the point where it's absolutely miserable. If you don't have the new characters, just look at Stygian Onslaught. And then also make sure that that new type of character is coming out every single patch, because you got to make sure people are spending money. They're not pulling units because they feel like they want them or they like their kit, they like their design. They pull these new units because they feel like they won't be able to play the game anymore if they don't. And that's something that's happening in every single Hoyoverse title. And one thing I gotta mention about ZZZ 2.0 that I feel like a lot of people just have either glossed over or put under the table is how bad the optimization of this patch is, how awful this update is when you're running it and you're going through the open world sort of like Arrow City space area. It runs like shit. It runs unbelievably bad, and I think it only lends more credence to this idea that there's a lack of budget going on with the ZZZ team, and they can't even afford or I guess manage optimizations for the gameplay experience. Yeah, I'm just gonna say it like this. ZZZ 2.0 currently, performance-wise, it runs worse than Wuthering Waves 1.0 did on my computer. And this is the thing. I upgraded my computer. My graphics card and my processor are literally better than what they were a year ago. And ZZZ 2.0 runs worse than WuWa 1.0. on my computer. And I think most people can probably say the same exact thing. It is that unoptimized. It is complete trash. Ladies and gentlemen, Gacha in 2025 feels dead. Why do you think there are so many people playing that goddamn Uma Musume horse thing game? It's because all of these Hoyo games under this Hoyo umbrella with these crazy higher-ups that are doing things like dual debut banners, and then rampant power creep, and then also introducing entirely new enemy mechanics that directly interact with all the newest stuff that they're coming out with. Why else would that even happen? Why is it happening so early on in a game like ZZZ's lifecycle if they're not trying to nickel and dime every single player moving forward? And why is it so clear that they're also cutting an immense amount of actual budget from what they're putting out to the public? It's quite a situation, ladies and gentlemen. It's quite a situation. And it's not surprising to me at all that the only kind of like shining light there is in the gacha space currently is every single new Wuthering Waves update. Because that's actually a game where you can see the quality coming out. You can see the returns on investment. Septimont is and still and will be one of the greatest 2.4 updates, mid-version updates a game has ever had. And it has made the framing of all of these lackluster approaches to other games, it's made it abundantly clear. I think this is the last thing that I'll talk about with Zenless Zone Zero that I think makes it truly the most painful of all, is the fact that the game has dropped down in quality significantly. You guys might not have noticed that I went
It's
ahead
on
and
that-
I uploaded a video on ZZZ. You'll notice over here, there's a lot of stuff like this. Black screens with white text. No more comic books, no more effort. Just black screens with white text. This is about a 30 to 40 minute span of time of me playing the latest 2.0 update. It's just repeated black screens and white text and almost no dialogue. It is genuinely, or sorry, not almost no dialogue, no meaningful dialogue. And this quest is one of the most painful experiences I've ever had in the space. And this is directly contrasting with me loving version 1.4 of Zenless Zone Zero. You compare ZZZ 1.4 to ZZZ 2.0 in terms of like storytelling and story quality, it is absolutely dropped off a cliff. It is unfathomable what they've done to bastardize the characterization of the MCs of everything that's going on. It makes you wonder what exactly these developers have been doing this entire time. And the unfortunate part is, ladies and gentlemen, it's been wasting your money and it has been ruining the reputation of Hoyoverse. And I don't know when they're going to stop, because the HSR Fate collaboration was supposed to be the one that saved not just Honkai Star Rail, but I think Hoyoverse's reputation as a whole. And the fact that they've gone ahead and they've bungled it this fucking badly, I think it requires us to do a deep dive and an actual look into how they've been managing their other games. So that's what we did here today. So yeah, hopefully this overview was helpful, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know what you all thought about my takes on the Gacha in 2025. I think Hoyoverse killed it. Let me know if you think I'm wrong. Peace out.